أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وصلى الله وسلم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه أجمعين. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد صلاة تخرجنا بها من أوحاد الوهم وتوضحنا ما أشكل حتى يفهم إنك تعلم ولا نعلم وأنت علام الغيوب. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.
These gatherings are incredibly blessed, and it's about continuing these traditions that have been in the Muslim community for centuries, which, alhamdulillah, I was blessed to witness in my years that I spent in Fez. And actually it was a breath of fresh air for me, where we saw people coming together, both young and old, in order to remember and raise a remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and His beloved Sayyidina Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And as we were talking about before, about these gatherings the purpose of them was to rejuvenate people, to enable to ground them in their being, in order to connect with one another as a community. And one of the most beautiful aspects of the gatherings in Fez was that you had the youngest of the young to the eldest of the old. It's something that's very, very difficult to achieve in our societies today, where if an old man turns up to a club, he looks like a fool, and if a young person turns up to something for the old people, he's made to stand out. And so the whole purpose of these gatherings is that everyone's welcome and everyone is safe in order to express themselves and to open themselves up to these blessings. And they use very different means. Each country has its own traditions and own practices. In Morocco, there was the burning of oud, and there was the use of orange blossom in the gatherings, that they would shower. In fact, in the Qaraween, in the summer when it got so hot, there used to be this guy with a Ghostbusters pack on his back, basically, with a huge gun, and he used to spray people with orange blossoms around the whole mosque. And then there would be the serving of mint tea, and then there would be the serving also of sweet breads. And so the whole purpose was that people on a Thursday night, Jumu'ah coming in, they had a sense of this special day, and once a week meeting up together to join one another. And this is so important in our day and age, especially for our children. I stress this over and over again, is that don't underestimate the power of nostalgia. I go over this a lot, but it's something that can't be underestimated. When we were young, we had our happy memories of escaping, everything. What was our nostalgia? It was Star Wars, or it was Star Trek, or it was whatever your sweet was. And even now, when they bring the film industry understands this psychologically. Is that all these films coming out now, they're all rehashes of comic books we used to read, or movies we used to watch. And they realise that they're milking it for as much as they possibly can, because they realise it's a powerful thing psychologically for the human being. How about if our children, their nostalgia is this? Okay? Where they feel grounded in their religion here, they see their fathers enthusiastic about the religion. That's incredibly important in this day and age. Because we've got a huge crisis where even Islam, I thought this wasn't going to happen to the Muslims, but when I was young, my mother pushed me with my religion, and I thought Christians were all a bunch of airy-fairy girls. Why? Because it was women that were making the push. And then my father wasn't interested in religion whatsoever. And we have the same dilemma in the Muslim community now. It's so important that we come together as a family, men, the husbands, the wives, the fathers, the mothers, and their children see that, rejoicing in the praise of the Prophet ﷺ, because they're going to take their religion from you. They're not going to take it from one of your side. The kids today, the parents, they say, "My kids, I'm scared he's not respecting me." So they put them in a madrasa and say, "Teach him academic Islam." Academia is not going to save them. It's going to be things like this. And so this is the whole purpose behind the gatherings. And the reflection tonight is on the name of the Prophet ﷺ, Tayyibun. The Prophet ﷺ, one of his names that we recited tonight is Tayyib. And Tayyib, the root of Tayyib, means something that's sought after, something that you seek, you're drawn to, and within it, there's no sort of filth in it whatsoever, and it's pure and wholesome. And this is the Prophet ﷺ, is that everything about him, he draws us near to him when we understand his personality, in his spirituality and in his wisdoms and in his presence and his physical being. Everything about him is pure. And this is demonstrated first and foremost in that even, which is strange because the Prophet ﷺ, he wore perfumes, even though his sweat and his perspiration was even greater than the perfume he was wearing. Why? In order to teach us. The Prophet ﷺ came as a qudwa, as an example for us, in order to show us how to live. And so there's narrations of Sulaym. She used to take a vial and used to collect the sweat of the Prophet ﷺ when he was resting in their home. And then the Prophet ﷺ asked, what's she doing with this with his perspiration? And she says, we use it to treat our children, our barakah, when they're ill. And also we collect it, we mix it with our perfume, and we find it the greatest of mixes of perfume. It overpowers all the rest. And so this is the Prophet ﷺ. He not only radiated from him was perfume, but he encouraged others to do this as well. And this is one of our traditions that's based back, Allah knows best, even to Sayyidina Adam alayhi salam. There's narrations, Allah knows best of their authenticity, that when Sayyidina Adam came down from heaven, that he landed, he resided in India. And this is the hotbed, Allah knows best, I don't know much about perfumes, see the answer can help me here. It's the hotbed of perfumes and spices and scent, I assume. Okay? And they say one narration is that he had a staff from paradise, Allah knows best, and it dried and he planted it basically, and then from there stemmed all the scents of the world. And one of them was oud. They say this was a scent that carried on Adam. And so the oud itself is something that's beyond this world. It's something that's priceless. It's something that takes us back to our origin. It's something that grounds us. As I was talking about, that one of the natures of oud, and Sidi al-Sam can corroborate this, is that it calms down the nervous system. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he saw it as a shifa from about 7 different illnesses, if my memory serves me correct. One of them, we can see that it calms one. It calms one's being. And so this is, as you see it wafting throughout the gathering, we're hoping it's calming you. Because as I said, you calming Ibrahim? One of the purposes of these gatherings is to try to calm down our nervous systems, because we're yanked up. And this, because we don't know how to settle our nervous systems in this day and age. We don't know how to self-regulate, and that's why we have all these emotional issues. And so one of the benefits and one of the purposes of aroma or of perfume, of these scents, is that it's one of the most powerful ways to change people's states. Why? Because scent is linked straight to the limbic system. The amygdala and the hippocampus, it hits them straight away. And these are things that are very difficult. You can't control your amygdala with your prefrontal cortex, your brain, the logical part of your brain. It's very difficult to settle your emotions through I shouldn't be doing this, calm down, talk your way out. And so one of the most powerful ways to actually bring and calm yourself down is through scent. And so the Prophet ﷺ saw this as an incredibly important practice because you're not only giving sadaqah and blessing to yourself, but you're giving it to all those around you as well. So when when a person purchases oud and they use oud, they're not just benefiting themselves, they're benefiting all those around ourselves. And so the Prophet ﷺ highly encouraged. What were the scents that he used? He used musk, he used oud, he used amber, and he used rayhan. Now, to the best of my knowledge, people usually translate rayhan as basil, but to the best of my knowledge, it just refers to any sweet flower or herb. Allah is best. And so the Prophet ﷺ loved these things, and it says that he used to adorn his beard, and he used to adorn his hair with scent. And so this is a practice that we have from our traditions. Why did the Prophet ﷺ do this? One of the other reasons he did this was because he was constantly in the company of the angels. And as we're here tonight, one of the purposes we're here tonight, making dhikr, because we understand that the angels, they flock to circles of dhikr, and then they surround them with their wings up until the highest heavens, and they ask forgiveness from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for us. So the dhikr brings the angels, but it's not just the dhikr that brings the angels, it's the scent that brings the angels as well. Because it's remember, these scents are from paradise. And so the angels, they come into the presence of the people that burn these scents and make this dhikr. And so we're trying to bring as many angels as we possibly can, try to resource ourselves and try to instill a sense of our homecoming, because our souls, they yearn to go back to the place of origin, and these are reminding us of our origin and settling us. Because do you realize the power of scent is one of the most, again, it's one of the most powerful things to bring you into the present moment. And all mental illnesses come from two things: the past and the future. Worries about the past and stresses about the future, living in your head. When you come into the present with your five senses, it's impossible for you not to be in the present moment. You become grounded in yourself, and you become as if you regain your autonomy, your sense of who you are and where you should be going. And this is the greatest gift that people can have in their lives, to be able to be grounded in their very being, where Allah gives them a furqan, a criterion within themselves, where they can judge between where they need to go and what's right and what's wrong. That's the greatest gift. And people that are traumatized, people that have mental disturbances, they're always asking people, what should I be doing? And they're always throwing and projecting things on other people. Have you noticed that? You'll sit with a person and you'll give him advice for 2 hours and you're like, yeah, he's getting it. Oh, I'm getting it. And then he doesn't apply anything you do. And then he comes back another week. It's because these people aren't grounded. These things, they ground us. And so it's incredibly important for us to recognize and appreciate these blessings that we have. Now, one beautiful thing that I'd like to share with you is a line from, 2 lines from the Hamziyya of Imam Busayri, where he talks about the Prophet ﷺ. Now, the Prophet ﷺ went through hardship in his life. But despite that, of course, he was grounded in his very being. And all of you are probably aware of the hadith where Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu anha, she mentions to the Prophet ﷺ, was there a day in your life that was more intense, more severe, more tough than Uhud? Where the Prophet ﷺ, he was injured so badly, and the Muslims are forced to retreat up to the Mount of Uhud. And the Prophet ﷺ said, yes, there was a day far more severe than that. What was it? A lot of people think it was Taif. But in fact, it wasn't Taif. It was when the Prophet ﷺ was going around Mina in the period of Hajj, trying to call the people to give him asylum from the people of Mecca. It wasn't a situation there in Mecca at the time. The Muslims were becoming highly persecuted. Imagine, you're a leader of a people, you've brought them to a message, and they're suffering heavily. You've seen people tortured, people killed, and the Muslims are desperate. They turn to the Prophet ﷺ and saying, Ya Allah, O Messenger of Allah, won't you make dua for us? And so it was an incredibly traumatic time for the Muslims. And then he realizes that he comes back from Taif, and he's rejected. And then he's going around his tribes, asking them to take him under their protection, and they're rejecting him. He says that was the most difficult time. Why? Because for a human being, what's the most difficult thing for you? Where you feel there's no way out. And where you feel that no one's there to help you. While Uhud, it wasn't as traumatizing for him. Why? Because he had all his Sahaba around him. They were in Medina. They had their security. But what's beautiful about Uhud was that lines that Imam Busayri says about this. He said, مظهر شجة الجبين على البرء كما أظهر الهلال البراء. He says his face manifests a wound on his forehead that's been healed, like the first night displays its crescent moon. So he says the beauty of the wound of the Prophet ﷺ on his head is like seeing the sky in its beauty at night, and then seeing the first sliver of the halal moon. When someone sees that and rejoices. So what he's saying is that wound on the Prophet ﷺ, it didn't deface him, it didn't ruin him, rather enhanced his beauty even more. Just like the moon, the slither of the new moon enhances the beauty of the sky, and everyone's yearning for it. And then he says, سُتِرَ الْحُسْنُ مِنْهُ بِالْحُسْنِ فَعْجَبْ لِجَمَالٍ لَهُ الْجَمَالُ بِقَاءُ. He says, the beauty was masked, was veiled by another beauty, i.e. the scar on his head. So just wonder at this beauty that for another beauty is a container. And so this is the reality of the Prophet ﷺ. And what we take from this is that our wounds, whether they be emotional wounds in our lives, or whether they're physical wounds, or any of these things, when we embrace them, and when we open up to them, and when we open ourselves up to the possibility and the lessons that we've taken from those, we actually manifest our true beauty. It's through tribulation in our lives, it's through hardships in our lives that we really blossom. And that's the message that we take from oud. Because oud is a tree that's been affected by a fungus that's eating away at the tree, and the tree, to combat that infection, it produces a resin because of the illness. And it's through that resin that we call it al-oud. And oud means wood of all woods, basically. Because oud means wood in Arabic, but this means the wood of all woods. And it's like gold dust, because we know its origins are from paradise. And then when we go into paradise, that we will actually burn, as we're doing here, we will sweat musk, and we will have these, what do you call these things? Mibkhara. What was that?
Incense burners.
The incense burners. They're fumigating, is that the right word? Oh. Yeah, the incense in paradise. So this is as Allah says in Surah Waqi'ah, وَأَمَّا إِنْ كَانَ مِنَ الْمُقَرَّبِينَ, and if he's from those draw nigh to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, draw close, فَرَوْحٌ وَرَيْحَانٌ. He says it's rawh, and this comes from the same word as ra'iha, which is a scent, which means it opens up your soul. I don't like to say that it uplifts you and it's as if it's leaving the body. No, in fact, it grounds you in your body, these scents. They don't take you, they rather ground you in your very being, your ruh. And so you've experienced openness of spirit, expansion, and ease, and scent. This is what they're going to be smelling. So that when they say the scent of paradise goes on for 40, to another age of 70, to another age of 100, to another 150 years past paradise. So they say the people who are from this close draw nigh, they actually smell the scent of paradise in this world. And this is just an inkling of what we're going to experience. And so the oud tree, if you see the oud tree, it's amazing. It's like branches upon branches curling around one another. And it's an expression of, despite hardship, despite suffering, we produce beauty through it. And Peter Levine has got very interesting, in his book Waking the Tiger, he's got a very interesting quote about this. He says, when a young tree is injured, it grows around the injury. As the tree continues to develop, the wound becomes relatively small. So there's a wound on the tree, it becomes injured, the tree actually starts growing around the wound. And so the actual wound is still there. And so the wound becomes relatively small in proportion to the size of the tree. And it gnarls and curls, and it becomes misshapen, and its limbs become misshapen to speak of its injuries and obstacles that it encountered through this incident, and it's overcome. Therefore, the way a tree grows around its past contributes to its exquisite individuality, its character, and its beauty. I certainly don't advocate traumatization to build character, but since trauma is almost a given some point in our lives, the image of the tree can be a valuable mirror. And so this is the reality. Despite your past doesn't define us, it's what we go towards and how we grow from that really defines us. So I ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless this gathering and bless us. And as I said, just one last point that's in my mind, is that this is why this thing's priceless. A lot of people, and see, I was probably appreciate this, is that a lot of people say this stuff's so expensive. Buy it, because if you value something, it's priceless. Think about life experience. Think about your schooling. Think about what you achieved to become a professional, whether you spent years to achieve that. And you spent effort, time, struggling. But it's priceless. You can't, and the experience that you got. I remember one man, he opened up an Islamic shop in Bradford, and a man came in and he started looking at the tasbihs in in the store, and he looked at them, he said, "Oh my God, 150 quid?" He said, "What a rip-off." And the man, cunningly, straight away saw, "Hang on a minute, that watch you've got, how much is that watch?" He said, "About £1,000. He said, "Well, it's what you value then, isn't it? If you value," and this is the biggest problem with us in our communities, you know, if you look at it, when it comes to food, when it comes to real things that bring about change, we don't want to spend money on it. Why? Because we don't value ourselves in reality. It's a reflection that we don't value ourselves. We spend money on cars, we spend money on houses, we spend money on clothes because we value what other people think about us. That's the reality. The person that spends a fortune, and I'm not saying it's wrong to spend money on a flash car, if it's, you know, if it serves a purpose, alhamdulillah. But that's the reality. If we're spending money on things to get admiration from other people, it's because we think little of ourselves. When we spend money on food that's going to nourish us, organic food. You look at organic food and you think, my God, that's expensive. But I'll tell you, you won't let your kid throw it in the bin. If you buy organic chicken or organic lamb, you'll make sure that boy eats that meat. If he's not going to eat it on his plate now, we're saving, but he's going to eat it. Why? Because you value it now, because of the money that you actually spent on it. And that's something that's going to nourish you. Likewise, these things. So the scholar, it's a narration from Sayyidina Umar, but Allah knows best. That he said, even if you were to spend all your wealth on scent, you wouldn't have gone to extravagance. Or in another narration, two-thirds, I think, isn't it? Two-thirds, another narration, is that you have an extravagant. Why? And what's extravagant in scent? It's extravagant if you burn loads of it and waste it. But it's not extravagant that you actually purchase it with your intention that you're able to rent to benefit yourself and benefit other people. And so this, obviously, if you haven't got the money, don't buy it. If you've got the money, you should spend on things that are actually going to be a benefit for you. And so I hope you've appreciated the importance of scent in this talk and the importance of these gatherings. Ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to raise our spirits and give us deep grounding within our very being through all these different means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given us and enable us to be able to connect with deep within ourselves, our true source that's connected to the source of where we came, paradise. Allah grants us paradise and a sense of it in this life and the next. Thank you very much for tonight.